All right, everybody, Advancing Man Project show, and I'm here today with Eric Moss. I've known Eric for a long time. I was just thinking about it the other day, coming up on 20 years, right?
It's
And
something like that. I want to say it was like 2006, 2007,
yeah,
right?
so between 15 and 20 years, we've known each other, and we met back in the old fitness kettlebell days at a big fitness professionals business conference, connected up with each other there. And we have very parallel paths. We both have become strongmen. Eric's out there rocking stages, doing corporate keynotes, doing school shows, doing all the same kind of stuff that I think is so fun and rewarding out there, bending steel and inspiring people. He has two children, two girls, age 6 and 4, which my son is 5, so it falls right in the middle. As a strongman, he's world record holder. And he's also an author of a book called The Strongman Experience. Is that right?
The Performing Strongman
The
Experience,
Performing
but
Strongman Experience.
it's like
And a personal trainer. And you're based out of, I always screw up the pronunciation of your town. It's in New Jersey and it's called what?
Booten.
Booten. That's not the place
Yeah.
I'm thinking of. What's the other place that starts with an H?
Oh, I lived in Hopatcong, but
Hopatcom.
I since moved to Rockaway, like right around the corner from my parents, which is
Okay.
super handy.
Yeah, I always defaulted to pronouncing Hopatcong as Hoptakong, and I knew that wasn't right, but here we
Yeah,
are.
that's what the GPS would call it.
Yeah. And so I appreciate you being on the show today. We are going to just, like we were talking about before I hit record, we're just going to talk about stuff and see where this all goes. So give us a little bit of background about your personal journey, how strength has woven itself into everything that you do, and just um, talk a little bit about, give me the condensed version of the Performing Strongman Experience book, because that book is pretty autobiographical as it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say if anyone wants to go in depth on it, my book is available on Amazon. But to put it into a shorter version, is like when I was a kid, I was allergic to just about everything you could think of. I had also attention deficit disorder, and I was told by my second grade teacher that I was a lazy little boy that would never amount to anything. With attention deficit disorder, I was medicated, and the medication helped me focus on my studies, but it made me shy and withdrawn, which made it difficult for me to make friends and talk to girls and all that stuff that you fixate on when you're an adolescent, right? So as I reached high school, I got involved in martial arts, which gave me confidence, and I also got involved in weight training, which as you get more and more confident with the weight training, it transforms every aspect of your life and enabled me to be who I was meant to be to begin with, which gave me a passion for anything strength and fitness related, which led me to being a personal trainer, which led me to that conference where you rolled up some frying pans and gave me some parting words of wisdom with that, which it's like when you look back on it, it's like you talk about different turning points in your life, and that was one of them, you know.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm happy that I can be included as that touch point in there too, because um that's what it's all about for me with doing feats and connecting with people, using feats as a tool to do that. It's like if I can do a feat and someone's like, that's awesome, I want to go do this other thing. I feel inspired, and it sounds kind of cheesy and all that, but it's the truth, right? I mean, sometimes the cheesiest things or the cringiest things are the truth. We do this. Speaking for myself, and I believe I'm speaking for you too. We do these feats of strength. We get on stages and talk to people because we want people to look up and look around and see that there is potential within them to do and to have and to be whatever they want to be, and that whatever they've been told they have to be, like you as a kid or
Mm-hmm.
like me as a kid. I was disruptive. I had a stutter. I got in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, and I think teachers and guidance counselors stuff pretty well wrote me off too. You go from that, from lacking confidence and from not wanting to have the attention on you, to being the center of attention and speaking in front of people. For me, that was a big thing, speaking in front of people, because I had that stutter, and it was rough, and I would trip up. And so now I get paid to speak in front of people. It's a pretty big thing. And I know that, like I said, there's a lot of parallels between your journey and my journey. So keep going with it.
Yeah,
Tell us
it
more.
was kind of like when we met, it was like we're basically like kindred spirits in a regard, because it's like we both just have that innate drive to not only perform but to also inspire.
Hmm.
You know, it's like I don't want to just go up there and be like, witness the power of Eric Moss. Whoa! That's not really what I'm about. Like I'm about what's possible, you know?
Yeah.
And I also like love hearing how I positively affected someone,
Hmm.
you know?
Definitely. Definitely. Talk more about your approach to putting a show together, to being on a stage, to what you want to convey to people while you're up there doing the things that you do, and also
So,
how you use the feats to enter to you know, how you intersperse the feats in within that to help drive the point home.
right. So, when I first went down this journey, I was in a tough place in my life. I don't know if you remember, but it's like when we were at that conference for the Association of Old Time Barbell and Strongman annual reunion dinner.
Hmm.
I went to that conference just to get my mind off of everything that was going on in my life at that time. My first wife had left me about 2 weeks before that for the one that I thought was my best friend, and I was in a bad place. I had with no best friend to lean on. I was leaning on my other friends, Jack, Jim, and sometimes Jose, which I use as like a temporary crutch. But it was also at that particular conference that I met someone who changed my life forever. New Jersey Superman, the late great Greg Matonic.
Hmm.
Now, I started working with him in that conference was in October. I started working with him in January the following year.
What
And I
year
was
was
like,
that? That was what,
that was
2008,
2012.
12. Okay.
Yeah. Um, so I started learning from Greg, and I was also reading a lot of personal and professional development books at the same time because I'm like, I got to get my life back. And I noticed that there was a parallel between the things that Greg was telling me and the things that like Napoleon Hill was telling me and like Think and Grow Rich and various other books, things that Tony Robbins was saying. And I remember just thinking at the time, I'm like, man, this stuff, like a motivational speech would make a really good fit for my show. Kind of like how magicians use like comedy acts as part of their shows. Or I was like, motivation just seems to fit like a glove with this. Um, Not even realizing how much money could be made
Hmm.
doing that. I just wanted to impart on people that they're capable of more than they realize. And then it was like, as I started after Greg passed away, and I'm trying to make sure that what he spent the last year of his life teaching me not go to waste. I started trying to get shows, and Chris Ryder saw what I was doing, and he's like, "This guy's good for this. Let's work together."
Hmm.
And then it was like you facilitated that connection as well. And it's been a wild journey. And I remember it's like every time I think like I have to turn it away, it's like there's something that pulls me back into it. Like I remember a couple years back, I had thought that I should stop doing schools. And it was because like corporate just has way bigger budgets than schools
Hmm.
do. But I still had some schools under contract, and I went to what I thought was the last one I would ever do. And I get kind of choked up whenever I talk about this. We'll see if I can hold it together. And I went and I did this show, and this woman ambushes me in the parking lot as I'm like putting my stuff away. And she's like, "Thank you so much for doing this show. You know, my granddaughter goes to this school, and she's going through a really difficult time in her life. And, you know, the father beats the mother and that sort of thing. And it's just really good to have some sort of positivity come into her life." And I said to her, I'm like, because one of the reasons I thought I'd stop doing shows at schools, I wasn't sure if the message was hitting. Because, you know, like the kids see the feats and, you know, it's like, wow, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's more than that. And I said, do you think it really makes a difference? And she said, absolutely. They understand more than you realize. And that was like right what I needed to hear when I needed to hear it. So it's like from an esoteric sense, it's like the signs that I'm on the path, the right path are there as long as I'm open to them.
What age group was that? How old was this girl?
That was elementary school.
Oh
So
yeah.
somewhere between K and 5, that particular school was. And I oftentimes think of that little girl. Whenever I do a show, I'm like, which one of these kids is going through that hard time?
That's I'm glad you shared that story. I didn't know that story. I'm glad you shared that because I had a very similar experience when I was first getting the corporate school, figuring out my who's my target audience that I want to work with there, and figuring out how to frame things together so that the feats support the show. And like you said, it's not just a witness my power. It's like, no, we have this power kind of thing. And I did um it was very low paying, but it was like 20 minutes from my house, so I could just like zip up and do it thing at a like a comic book convention thing at a hotel. And so I go in and I do the show, and there were maybe 30 people in the room. And it was one of those things that I'm on the stage and everybody decided to sit in the back. So like the first 6 or 7 rows are sort of empty. And you get up there and you're trying to get everybody into it and you're trying to draw off of it. And they're a bunch of comic book nerds. And I don't say that disparagingly. I say that as like, these are by and large, most of the people that were in the room were pretty introverted and weren't like into, jumping up and down and yelling and screaming. So I do my show and I talk about what I talk about. And it was very much in its infancy, the way the show was structured. But I do a bit with a feat that we both do, where we break a chain with chest expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't a lot of us that are doing that feat as far as strongmen go. There's maybe 5 or 6 of us that are doing that feat, but that feat is very special to me because Slim the Hammer Man, the Mighty Atom, two of the guys that have been inspirations, and
It's old school.
it's old
Yeah.
school, yeah. And I do this whole bit where I talk about breaking chains and how negative influences and negative self-talk, especially, put a weight on our heart and all that sort of stuff. So I pop out of the chain and do the thing, and I don't think much about it. But then after the show, as you know, when you win people over and they want to hang around and come up and get a photo or talk to you or whatever, which is always absolutely wonderful. There was this one girl, I would say she was probably in her early 20s, and she was just sort of standing there, sort of just very sheepishly looking at the ground and waiting for everyone to come up and say hi or whatever, ask their questions. And at first I thought she was just standing there, but it turned out that she was actually waiting to come speak to me. And she comes up and I talked to her for a minute, and she would not make eye contact. She just kept looking down at the ground and was kind of shuffling back and forth, visibly uncomfortable to be having a conversation with someone. And I could tell that this was taking a lot of just mental bandwidth for her to go up to a stranger and initiate a conversation the way that she was doing it. So I thought, this, whatever she's going to say, it must be pretty important to her, right? And so she was just kind of on her words, and she was chasing the thought. I mean, that's kind of how she sounded when she was talking. And essentially she said that she doesn't have very many friends. She loves the culture of these Comic Con type things, but she hardly ever goes to them. And part of it is because she doesn't have confidence in all this. And she pauses for a second, and then she raises her head up and looks me dead in the eye, like piercing into my eyes for the first time. And she says, "I really needed to hear you say what you said today. Thank you." And so now I'm crying, and
Yeah.
I never got her name. I would recognize her if she walked into the room, because like you said earlier, there are those pivotal moments that you don't know that are going to hit you. But that was a very similar moment for me. I'm like, okay, people are paying attention to this. It's not just, oh, he lit a board on fire and popped a balloon with a nail drive through it. It's people are actually picking up on the vibrations of what I'm saying. And I think we're very similar in that is the driving factor behind doing those sorts of things. So I appreciate you sharing that story that you shared. That's good stuff there. Can you speak a little bit more about other shows that you've done? And I tell you what, it'd be fun since I don't get to have this particular topic of conversation very often with people on the show, but let's talk about when things go wrong on stage and there's 500 or 1,000 people watching you and something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Oh God, Iron Tamer. So I've had a couple instances, like one, this one is just more of a fun story. It's my very first show. It was I had donated a show to a fundraiser, and it's like my show hadn't come together. It was like starting to show the signs that it would come together. But as a fundraiser for this girl that didn't have any health insurance and she'd gotten a pretty serious illness. And I went up there to bend a steel pretzel and I didn't measure it right or something, or I bent it in the wrong spot. So I wasn't able to get the loop all the way around. So I'm like, a goose, right?
Been there.
I
Totally
meant
been
it
there.
like that.
Yeah.
But then there's like other times that it's been like it actually kind of changed the course and it ended up becoming a story that I use in future things. So like when I first started putting myself out there, I'm like, how do I get shows? So I reached out to magicians and motivational speakers. And one of the magicians I became friends with is like, I've been booked it for like an hour and a half for a high school senior assembly. Would you like to provide an intermission for me? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. So I prepared this speech in my head called Nothing's Impossible. And I get out on stage and I bend a steel bar, no problem. Break a chain, no problem. Twist a horseshoe, no problem. Then I pull out a wrench, problem. The wrench was tempered. Like at the time, it was like they were coming in a 2-pack and its brother went without issue. But this wrench was tempered and it was nasty. And I'm like, all right, set my mind, focus on what I'm doing. And then I put some power on it where a wrench would normally go. Nothing happens. I put more power on it and I held it for longer. Nothing happens. And then I put as much power as I could and I held it for as long as I could. And the room starts going dark. And I'm like, well, if I continue this, I'm going to pass out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I get on the microphone. I'm like, this wrench is putting up more of a fight than I anticipated. I could keep going if you want. I have no idea how long it's going to take. Or I could just move on to the next feat. And the next feat was rolling up frying pans. And people really like the frying pans.
And the thing about rolling up frying pans, my experience is people go crazy over it. Compared to wrench bending, it's far easier to do in my experience.
And predictable.
Yes, much more predictable.
Wrenches, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Fact.
Which I'm like, there's lessons in there. It's like, one is you only fail when you quit, because I would take that wrench home and later and it sat on my coffee table for 6 months. And then a couple days before the holidays, I spend an hour screaming in my living room like a well-adjusted adult, but I was able to get it in an hour. Oh, that was horrible though. Which ended up becoming like a story that I tell in my speeches. But there was another point that I was going to make with that. Oh yeah, one of the things is like, you don't know what you're going to get until you try.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's variance in materials with everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
But some things are a little bit more predictable than others. And wrenches, you have no idea. Some will go, some you can't even move with a sledgehammer.
Yep.
You don't know until you try.
Yep. You when I interrupted you a minute ago, you were saying that you asked the audience, they said move on. You said we're going to frying pans. So that's where you were in your story. If you want to go back and
no. I mean, that's the meat and potatoes of it.
I want to make sure that I didn't disrupt a point that you were going to make. So,
nope.
I'm assuming the frying pans went pretty easily then.
Yeah, and that was also like a couple frying pans that I rolled up, and that like really blows people away when you do a couple of them.
Yeah. Did you
like the triple?
You stack them inside each other? Yeah. When we first met, is that what I did?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
it was actually 2 of them, which I still have actually.
Cool.
I gave mine away, but I keep yours.
I'm the same way. I've got so much twisted up stuff around here that's, worthless scrap metal to anybody except for people who know, and then people who know, they're like, oh, Slim the Hammerman bent this, or Dennis Rogers bent this for you. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
most definitely.
And it's like
Um,
when you have to fly off to a conference and like they weigh your suitcase, it's like, no, you please take it. Please take it. You know?
yeah. Yeah. Or are you like me with this particular thing? This is some insider pro road warrior strongman stuff. Um, I will pack a bag that has sharp and pointy things in it, but it's a carry-on size, and I'll check it on the way out and hopefully blast through everything and not have anything sharp and pointy to bring back, and do a carry-on the way home so that I don't have to wait for or run the risk of losing one more bag. Do you do that?
Well, no, because I actually carry mine in like a big long case that normally is used for transporting guns,
Me too.
which get yeah, which like when I was in Scottsdale, the conference organizer calls me up and she's like, I understand that you have like some unique props, but why'd you bring a gun? I'm like, I didn't bring a gun, and I always get stopped by TSA, and but
Yeah. What do you
meanwhile
pack
in
up?
Texas, in Texas, they're like, are there any guns? Nope. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. What do you pack up in that case? And what kind of case is it? What's the case look like? Because I'm curious now.
Uh, it's considered I guess a general utility case, but it's I think what is the limit? It's like 42 inches, 44 inches. So like with the inner measurement, the longest thing that I do is the 5/8 rebar,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll put that in like diagonally,
Is
and
that
then
4 feet?
yeah,
So it goes corner to corner.
yeah, and then in that particular case, it'll be a steel bar, a horseshoe, a carriage bolt, frying pan, human link handles, chest expansion belt, wooden board, nail. Did I say nail?
Not
The
yet.
nail, and then like the box of nails for driving,
Mm-hmm.
balloons. Um, did I say steel bar?
You did.
Oh, yeah, that too. Um, and then depending on how much it weighs, I'll put the shackles in there, but usually the shackles I'll have to put in the carry-on, which also generates some like weird looks from TSA. I'm like, I need that for a show.
What kind
This
of
doesn't
show?
help, you know?
That makes me think of I had that makes me think of in dodgeball when their bags get messed up.
Mm-hmm.
They get the wrong bags, and instead of their uniforms, they have all this like S&M bondage gear.
Yeah.
So what kind of show are you doing here? Don't worry about it. Yeah, for mine, I bought. Is it like a hard shell case, like almost like a guitar case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Um.
I used to try to carry it in a guitar case, but it's like I couldn't get the rebar to fit in it.
Right. Yeah, I got a similar case like that too. Very tough, hard shell, with foam inside of it,
Mm-hmm.
and and it was a rifle case, and I bought it, and the interior piece of foam was just like this giant rectangle of foam that's like 2.5 inches thick, and it was designed so that whatever weapon you had, whatever kind of rifle you wanted to put in there, whatever, you could cut out a silhouette of it, and it sits right into that. So I cut out a silhouette shape, marked it off and cut it out with a razor blade for my sledgehammer,
Mm-hmm.
because leverage feats are something that I almost always do. So I put that in there, and that, you're talking about 15 pounds already. And then you
Hey,
have to figure out which other bits of steel you can put in there to come in at that under the limit
yeah. With the
weigh in.
sledgehammer, I don't do the leverage bit, but I do the thing where it's like you're bridged out between two chairs and you have the cement block on your stomach and they smash
Yes.
it. I have them supply the cement block and
Mm-hmm.
the hammer because
Mm,
I'm like, I'm not traveling with that thing. That'll always put me over the limit.
yeah. Yeah. Um, I take my hammer, which I've had a pin welded onto the end of it so that I can add weight to it. So it's about 12.5 pounds.
It's custom. Yeah.
And then depending on where I am in a training cycle, how many shows I've been doing, or how I'm feeling, I'll carry anywhere from a single 2.5 pound plate or usually a 2.5 pound plate and a 1.25 pound barbell plate that I can then put on there. And that brings the weight up over, I think the 15 3/4, or is it 16.5, whatever it is, it's right around 16 pounds. And the way that I use that feat in the show is I do the, lay it on the stage, lever it up to vertical, like Slim the Hammerman's challenge hammer. And I'll call people up and have them do that at the 12.5 pound weight. And then no matter how it goes, it still turns out okay. Because even on the couple of rare occasions that I've gotten somebody who's just as strong as a bull and able to do it, even if they don't know the technique, or they're able to get it almost up, that's what she said, but not quite, then I can add weight to it. And it reinforces that an average person can get a feel for what this is like, but the training and the discipline that goes along with it to be able to take it way beyond that level. And I talk about the math in there too. I haven't done a show long enough that it's been so long since I've done a show that I don't have those numbers memorized, right? I know that a 16-pound hammer comes in at 496 pounds or inch-pounds of force. But the 12.5, I don't remember what that is exactly. Maybe it's 367.5 of force that has to go through the wrist. So yeah, working with hammers is fun. Traveling with hammers, not so much. But I'm with you on the whole thing about the guns. When I got off the plane in Munich, I had two freaking full on, bulletproof body armor with the machine guns hanging around their neck like this. Soldiers, military police come over. What do you have in the case? And I'm like, bro, just open it up and look. I'm not here to start any trouble,
Yeah.
But then the Germans did also want to know why I didn't have a gun in there. It was kind of strange. So, you have to,
Like
have to figure out
Texas.
yeah. Not like Texas. You got a gun in there? No. Well, here's one for you. Like the old joke in Nashville here about never, ever, ever leave a banjo in your car unlocked, because you'll come back and there'll be two more. So someone won't steal your banjo. People who don't want their banjos will think it's a banjo.
They'll give it to you.
Ground.
Yeah.
I guess that's a country music joke, I guess. Which, speaking of music, we have a lot in common in that range too. We're both very excited about some of the upcoming tours that are happening.
Yep.
Judas Priest.
Oh, my favorite.
Your favorite band.
Love Judas Priest.
About to hit the road. We were talking about it before I hit record about one of the guitar players who's not an original member, but one of the guitar players in Priest actually lives about a half an hour from me in a little town called Murfreesboro. A guy named Richie Faulkner, who and also I don't think I ever told you this, Dave Mustaine lives about 20 minutes from me as well.
Really?
Yeah, and I've seen him like at the farmers market before, which is kind of cool. I had met him once before, which is a story for another time, but I met him and bent a wrench for him in person because of a mutual acquaintance that we have. And so the next time I saw him, and I'll periodically seen him on airplanes or at the airport or whatever, or out around town, but seeing him at the farmers market was pretty cool because he's, over there buying zucchini like all the rest of us. But we were talking earlier about Richie Faulkner, and I think Judas Priest, obviously, Priest and Black Sabbath, we have to go on record. No one is going to dispute that they invented an entire genre, between the two of them, right? Not only did they invent a genre, they perfected a formula for band lineups. I mean, if we look at it, pretty much every there's three like primary band configurations that you can come up with, and they took care of two of them: the lead singer plus the trio. I mean, the one of them being like the power trio, like Jimi Hendrix Experience and Cream and proto metal, like that, right? But then you add a lead singer in there, and Zeppelin and Sabbath started that around the same time. But Sabbath obviously inventing heavy metal along the way as they did that because of the living legend Tony Iommi. And then the other is, let's just throw another guitar in there and let the guitars play off each other, right? And so I think Priest perfected that, and that everything that has come since then has been just variations on the theme of the twin guitar approach, in heavy metal. So, Richie Faulkner, I think, has the single most metal moment in all of music history that has ever happened. And
You're
that
talking
is,
about Painkiller?
I'm talking about Painkiller. I'm
Yeah.
talking about what was it like he ruptured his aorta or something in the middle of the solo from Painkiller, which if you're not a musician or if you're not a metal fan, the solo from Painkiller, it is not short and it is not easy to play. And so, he's up there, literally his heart exploding in his chest while he's playing. As he finishes the song, comes off stage, and they take him immediately to surgery. So that is like the most metal thing that could possibly ever happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like of course it happened during Painkiller,
Yes,
you
yes,
know?
most definitely. And prior to that, I thought that the most metal thing that ever happened was at the full solar eclipse a few years earlier. When was that? 2017, maybe?
You're talking about Bark at the Moon?
Talking about Bark at the Moon,
Yeah.
where Ozzy played Bark at the Moon as the eclipse happened, during the eclipse, and coming out of the eclipse. That's like the most metal thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So I
That
guess
must have been real special.
yeah. Did you ever see the videos of it?
I did. I was like, man, that must have been so cool to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think it's really cool that the two bands who, in my opinion, created the genre of metal also have the top two. And those moments are really kind of interchangeable, except with the eclipse, there was no danger anyone was going to die, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, that's like the two most metal things that could possibly happen. And those things happened decades after the bands formed, decades after they had established themselves and created this genre that, hundreds of thousands of bands have come along and emulated or been inspired by, and all that sort of stuff. So two parts to why I'm bringing this up. I want to hear your opinions on mighty metal moments that have happened with musicians throughout the years, and also how does that sort of thing relate back to being a performing strongman, and specifically the mental aspect of being a strongman.
So like I guess one of the things that is like when we talk about like perfecting heavy metal music is like where Priest really shined was like I guess providing the vibe of what metal is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like where Black Sabbath, they had the darkness for sure, and they had some killer riffs. But the way Rob Halford explained it during their like rock and roll Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, like the addition of the motorcycle on stage is kind of like the iconic metal thing because the motorcycle is like unapologetically loud. It
Mm-hmm.
is out there. It doesn't care what you think, right? It just is what it is, and it's badass and all that stuff. So I guess how that relates is, I mean, like being authentic to who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that like I'm finding it difficult to articulate that, but I mean that to me is what it is like we have this thing that we love and we're unapologetic about why we love it. It's
Mm-hmm.
dark, it's loud, it scares people, but it's what we love. And then it turns out that like people who listen to heavy metal music in psychological studies are like better balanced than most others. And the theory is because it provides a healthy outlet for that inherent darkness that's already in us that a lot of people deny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm totally on board with you that the vibe and the aesthetic and the, yes, Sabbath, Doom, heavy, like what key is this? It's in the key of Doom, right? It's just
Yeah.
that heavy, right?
The
But
devil's interval that they were scared would summon the devil when you played
yeah,
it was like their signature thing.
yeah. But I think also, in addition to that, um, it's very much like an old horror movie vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is how Black Sabbath was. And so in the midst of all that, you can still hear, or at least I can, Ozzy's love for the Beatles. And you can still hear Tony's love for the blues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Ward, he was Bill Ward was almost like a jazz drummer that showed up at the wrong gig and liked it, right? Or
Yeah.
or like he was at a jazz gig and like you're hitting the kit too hard, leave. And so he went and found a metal band, right? So there's still very much a um almost like a hippie vibe
Yeah.
in a lot of the Sabbath stuff, right? Like especially in some of their lighter stuff, like Planet Caravan, or like I saw a version of them recording more recently, like 10 or 12 years ago, re-recording The Wizard and with the
Hmm.
harmonica and all that. And I'm like, yeah, you guys were hippies that just stumbled on to heaviness, right? And I mean that with the sincerest form of love that I possibly can. Halford specifically, the motorcycle and him bringing the bondage S&M leather boy fashion sense into metal. At first glance, and everyone knows that Rob Halford's gay. I did not know until the other day that he's married to the guy who was he was like a child movie star. Tommy, I forget what his name is, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. But
I didn't
Halford
know that
bringing,
till just now, actually.
yeah, well, he posted on Instagram. Halford posted a photo of the two of them. It was like a happy holidays thing, and the guy looked familiar, and so I read some of the comments, and they named the guy's name, and I forget what his name is now, but I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that's who you were hitched up to. You're going to look it up now, right now, aren't you? I can tell.
No, my computer's actually kind of low on battery, so I'm just gonna
Okay,
go plug it in.
yeah.
Um, it's like I
So,
saw that thing too, but I didn't think anything of it. Although I've often wondered, I'm like, who is it that wins the heart of the metal god?
well, it's that guy, and I
You
don't
know?
remember what his name is, but we'll see if we can find out later on. But I think that bringing that whole leather and studs image thing into the general aesthetic of metal definitely added something to it that took it from being just kind of doomy and scary and let's smoke a lot of weed into this whole uh, 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 like you said earlier, it's hard to articulate, but it's metal, right? I mean, it's like you
Hmm.
see that and like you just can't help but throw up the horns and go, raw metal, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, if you actually look at the Iron Man video, they're dressed like hippies,
yes,
you know?
yeah,
That was what was out at the time. And then according to legend, and by legend it's KK's book,
right,
he saw Rob Halford pull up on a motorcycle one day wearing his full leather attire and all that stuff. And he's like, that is, they needed a look that captured the essence of what the music was like. And he's like, that looks like what we're looking for. And they also wanted a like uniformity. So it's like they had uniforms and this would be
right,
their band identity.
right.
And then I guess adding the motorcycle into it just came a little bit later. But I was like, yeah, that's the vibe. Because if you actually listen to Judas Priest, where they say they came from in Birmingham, where there's like foundries and forges and stuff like that, and this
Yes,
that informed the rhythm of the music. And that's kind of the imagery, is like this chugging thing that makes, like people say, what is it that you love about heavy metal? I'm like, when I listen to it, I feel like I can crash the walls and conquer the world.
right.
I like that feeling.
It's a good feeling. It's definitely a good feeling. Um, how many times have you seen Priest live?
Every tour that they've done since 2004.
Hmm,
So however many that is.
that's a
Because I
lot.
was like, I need to always see this band.
Yeah, yeah. I've only ever seen them once, and it was in 1984, 85. It was on the Defenders of the Faith tour.
That must have been sick.
It was amazing. It was amazing. They opened with the Metallion. They opened with Love Bites. And the Metallion, for anybody that doesn't know, and I know we're totally geeking out on metal here, but for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, the Metallion is this
Look it
big,
up.
this mythical, it's on the cover of the Defenders of the Faith album, and it looks like almost like a lion type monster beast thing. Like if you think about
Transformer.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like if you took one of the like the traditional Chinese lion dance costume type things and melded it with Optimus Prime, it looks like that, right? So it's this big metallic thing, and both its paws were up like this, and it wasn't. Did I say they opened with Love Bites?
You said they opened with the Metallion and then Love Bites.
Yeah. So it was everything goes dark, and Love Bites has this very distinct introduction where Halford sings the line and the band hits a ba down, and they do that 2 or 3 times, right? And it's like when you feel safe, ba down. When you feel warm, ba down. And so it's completely dark in the arena, and Halford sings the line, and the lights flash, and you can catch just that glimpse, like a strobe light effect. The lights flash in time with the music, and then when the band kicks in, the lights come up, and there's the spotlights and explosions and all that. But the Metallion had both of its paws up, and Halford was sitting on a throne of some sort, if I remember correctly, on one of those paws, and then it slowly lowered down to stage level, and then he walked off of that and kept singing the song. And I'm like, just the theatrical element of that done with that much power.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you see that stuff and you're just like, that's heavy metal right there.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
When I was introduced to them, like this is when I was like, I knew of Judas Priest from like recordings and stuff like that, but live is a completely different experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could see Rob Halford's voice. It's that powerful.
Yes.
But I remember it was at Ozfest in 2004, and it's like you see a bunch of bands come on, and they pretty much they play their songs and they walk around the stage, and that's pretty much the extent of their show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lights in the place go out, and there's like this big giant eyeball in the back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a spotlight in the middle of it, and it's like shining on you, like it's looking at you. And then they open up with the Helion, which is like the precursor to Electric Eye.
Yes.
And right before Rob Halford starts singing, the thing opens up, and there he is in the middle of the eyeball singing Electric Eye. I'm like, this is cool. This is what metal could be.
Yes. Yes. I've never heard that story about them performing that song that way. That's amazing. I'm gonna have to go dig up some YouTube and see if I can find it.
Look up the Rising in the East tour, because they did that same thing again.
Cool. And even when they put out stinkers like Turbo, there's still some good songs on there,
Yeah.
As an album, Turbo is like, but if you watch them live perform like Turbo Lover, you're like, oh, it's still heavy metal. You just recorded it like it was 1986 or 87 or whenever it was. But yeah, he does better when he shaves his head.
I like the look of the shaved head with the tattoos. It's
Yes.
badass,
Yeah. Yeah. And then some of my favorite stuff that Halford ever did was the stuff he did with Fight too. I love that stuff.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
Halford, like the Halford's self-named band.
Yeah.
Metal Mike actually lives like 20 minutes from me.
Didn't know
It's
that.
pretty cool.
Didn't know that. Oh.
And so like he'll do like local shows, and with his touring singer, the guy named Mark Lopes or Lopez, and that guy's pretty solid too. I'm like, this is pretty cool.
All right. So we've gone deep down the metal rabbit hole here, but let's see if I can bring this back around. Obviously, for anyone to come up with the music and the shows that not just Priest, but people of that caliber, and to have that kind of vision, they have to get something in their mind of what that end result feels like, looks like, sounds like. And then they sort of reverse engineer the process of how to get there. That, I think, is a parallel between the metal music that we're talking about and what we do as strongmen, right? And so I'm curious. I'd like to hear you talk about visualization, mental imagery, mental rehearsal, any kind of techniques that you have like that help you train for specific feats or help you in actually delivering a performance from a stage. Because I know that, earlier you mentioned Napoleon Hill. We both have dug deep into that old school metaphysical kind of stuff as we've gone along with this. I want to hear you talk more about that kind of stuff.
So with visualization, like basically you have to train the feats, right? But my signature feat, the one that I have the world record in, I don't train that. I only perform it live. The only kind of train, which is bending a steel reinforcing bar on the bridge of my nose. The only kind of training I do is like I might grab my nose to just kind of push it in a little bit, just to make sure everything is solid. But the vast majority of it that I've done was in my head,
Mm-hmm.
like envisioning bending steel on the bridge of my nose. And if I'm visualizing it really intensely, I can actually feel like a throbbing happening on my nose. And people have like put their finger on my nose and they could feel it happening, right? And then like last year, um, I had done something that I had been wanting to do ever since I first saw Dennis do it, which is hold back a motorcycle as it
Mm-hmm.
like tried to take off at full throttle. With that particular feat, you don't really know exactly what to expect. Like you kind of have an idea. And I remember thinking, I'm like, all right, let's see, I can train really heavy swings so that I can make sure that my grip is up to par. But in terms of like that sideways motion,
Mm-hmm.
no idea exactly what to expect, but I would visualize what it might feel like so that by the time I did it, which was 10 years, it was like essentially celebrating 10 years of
Mm-hmm.
going down this rabbit hole of steel bending strongman. I had only done it once just to test to make sure I could do it before bringing it to a show, but I had done it in my head thousands of times over a 10-year period. And I would watch the videos of Dennis doing it and like imagine me being there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that.
Yeah, that where you actually go and I think a lot of times we talk about visualization and people will imagine seeing themselves on a screen, like watching themselves on a movie screen or on a computer screen or TV screen or something. But I think that you nailed the essence of it right there, like the difference between success and failure. You could have imagined watching yourself on the screen, but what you actually did is you imagined yourself in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you bring in all of the sensory vividness of what does the pull on the harness and the handles feel like, what does sounds am I hearing when these bikes are revving up, what does this, can you smell the burning rubber, that kind of stuff, right? Like getting that kind of vividness in there. um I think that's the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful mental rehearsal or visualization.
Yeah,
um
it's like I had done it in my head 1,000 times. It was just a matter of doing it for real this time.
Now, do you, before you go on, do you get any anxiety or nervousness before you go on and perform?
Mm, it depends. So before I perform, like at least at the corporate level, I get myself bound up in shackles and chains around my chest. And I'll do this like a couple minutes before it's time to go on. But then the person starts like lagging, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of hard to breathe in this thing. Can you hurry it up?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced that adrenaline rush that goes with it, that could be interpreted as stage fright, that could be interpreted as nervousness or whatever, but I choose to look at it as this is just excited energy that I'm going to direct where I want it to go,
Oh yeah.
rather than allowing it to keep me from going where I want to go. And I think that that is one of the things that makes for a nice little segue from the idea of doing something like getting on a stage, experiencing a feeling, a physical sensation of an emotion that could be interpreted multiple ways. And then choosing to use that as part of the process rather than allowing it to shut down the process. I realized after my son was born that that is very much applicable to all things related to being a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically or especially, it's related to helping my son who's just turned 5 to be able to regulate his own emotional state. Because when he gets out of sorts, nervous, overwhelmed by something or upset about something, I'm able to I'm able to empathize with the state that he's in. And rather than try to shut it down, I'm able to sort of use that ability to mentally rehearse empathetically to put myself in the situation he's in. It's like, okay, something's going on he doesn't know how to manage. And it probably feels a lot like just about to walk on stage because there's uncertainty, right? I know what I'm doing, but there's still uncertainty. Or like being out there and having something go wrong, like the wrench doesn't want to move. Or in my case, a very similar thing happened at the Arnold Classic, performing with Dennis Rogers and Mike the Machine Bruce in front of God knows how many people were actually there. But it's the only time I've ever looked up and seen myself on a Jumbotron, like you'd have at a WWE event. But I went to bend a 12-inch spike, and everything was fine with me and the spike, but the stage was smooth, and there was we were in between like the grip sport athletes and the competitive strongmen, so they were doing implement changes and setting the stage up for the next group of athletes to come out and compete. And we were filling in that half-hour spot or whatever it was while everyone's behind us chaotically striking things down and putting things back up. And I go to do I hit it over my thigh and get, about that much of a kink in it. And I hold it up and everyone, oh, and all that kind of stuff. And I go between the legs to do the between the leg finish off that if you're a strong man, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, then it sounds like I'm just saying words that don't make sense together. But you put it between the legs, you use the hands
position.
Yeah, you put it between the legs, use the hands to torque it, but you also squeeze the thighs together to brace and to give it a little added bonus like that. And when I did, my foot slid.
I've had that happen many times on wrenches.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I set up again and do it again, and my foot slides again. And I'm like, this is like, it's like trying to push a chain, right? You can't do it. And so here I am in front of, I would say there are at least 3,000 people right there. And I knew way back there somewhere Lou Ferrigno could see me on the Jumbotron too, because I had spoken to him. I had spoken to him and met him earlier that day and been a 60 penny nail for him. And he's the reason, anybody that knows me, that he's the reason that I started lifting weights in the first place, right? And so I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to do now? And I'm like, I vividly remember thinking, what would the Mighty Atom do right now? And then I remember holding up the bent spike. And fortunately, someone caught it on video, and I was able to see what I did later. I moved from the between the leg position to this up top crush position and laid into it, and it didn't go, and then boom, it just melted like that. And I really don't have any conscious recollection of doing that. So being able to take that emotional energy and stuff that could just flatten you, and you'd be like, I got nothing else, and then you go hide and cry. Being able to take that and redirect it towards something productive, I see that as a thing that happens with my son. And he's starting to be able to recognize, okay, I'm experiencing these physical sensations. My chest feels this way. My body feels, he says his stomach feels jibbly, right? That nervousness kind of thing. And he's starting to realize that he can either label that as fear or he can label that as excitement. And however he labels it dictates what he's going to do next and how he's going to use that. Is that something, does stuff like that come up with you where you're able to draw on your experience as a performer and as a strength athlete and be able to apply something like that to a seemingly mundane situation of as a father?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so like one of the things that I realized as a dad, and I knew this inherently, but I had also like read books where they talked about this, is knowing that kids, when they're first born, they're basically just like a bundle of nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Every little sensation, they have no idea what it is. So every new sensation is a potential threat. So they cry. And then that crying incites us to come to their aid. As they go along, they get a bit more knowledge under their belt, but they still don't really know how to manage these big feelings that they have. even adults don't even know how to manage these big feelings that they have, as we've seen with people going off on tirades after or whatever.
Right.
Um, as far as like labeling things, fear and excitement, I'm still working with my kids on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they have, I don't even know where these fears come from, but like if my daughter is in the bathroom and we talk for some reason that scares her, no idea where that's coming from, but that's one of the things is like we're there to help her manage through her emotions. Also, like understanding where it's like they'll be afraid of like what other kids are thinking about them,
Mm-hmm.
or other kids will say stuff to them. And I'm like, well, why does that matter? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to go back to that whole like where you have no recollection of stuff.
Yeah.
Were you there when I set the world record?
No. Wait.
Okay,
At AOBS.
at AOBS, yeah.
Yes, I was.
So with that, if you remember, it was Chris Ryder on the he was the one managing the
He was
clock,
announcing, yeah.
and then Christina DeVos was my feeder.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I'm like, I could do 5 in a minute, optimistically 6 or 7, and then I had 8. And I'm like, let me just bring it just in case. I
Right.
highly doubt I'm going to get through all 8. But I started blasting through it, and I had like no sense of what's happening. It was just completely immersed in the moment where it was very mechanical. Hand me the bar, bend it again with my elbow, throw it on the ground, do it again, again. Where after she fed me the 8th one, she's like, that's it. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I was like legit confused. I couldn't process what was
Right.
happening in the moment, you know? And I think that's actually something that like our kids, they just can't process it. It doesn't click, you know? But then as they get a bit more experience into the boat, they're like, okay, I understand what this is.
Mm-hmm. How are you taking these principles, these ideas, these concepts, whatever you want to call them, that have allowed you to achieve the things that you've achieved as an athlete, as a performer, and using those as ways to help raise better children?
Oh, one of the things is like when they talk, kids get all sorts of limiting beliefs in their head. So I actually want to show you a picture. So this is my training studio.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes my kids like to hang out here when I'm working, right? And I'll be like, see if you can pick that up. And they're both capable of so much.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a picture. Let's see if I can get it to actually show. Is it there?
Yeah.
Picture Aurora drew of her picking up the beast, and it says, "Wow, you're strong." That's me encouraging her. And
Right.
that was a memory that she had of her being able. It was actually the 44 kilogram, which is
Right.
around 97 pounds for non-kettlebell people that don't speak in kilograms. For a 6-year-old, that is quite mighty.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. My highest performing video ever on TikTok isn't of me. It's of my son, who has seen me do the nail drive feat dozens, if not hundreds of times since he was born. And he, for as long as he's been able to walk up to the board, even before he was verbal, he would point at the board and the nail and indicate to me that, through grunts and baby talk, that he wanted to give it a shot. And I would give him the nail wrapped up, and he would just kind of, do the woodpecker thing on it. But one day I just happened to decide to roll the video as he was saying, "Can I try the nail drive?" And I wrapped it up, and he hits it. And I just happened to be going in slow motion too. Like I didn't pre-plan any of that, but he hits it, and the nail sticks in the board with enough force that he could, when he released the pad, it was still stuck in there. It didn't penetrate all the way through, but it went in deep enough.
5. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was, I want to say this was shortly before or shortly after he turned 4. So it's been a while since he did it. But that video has gotten 4.7 million views. It's my best performing video on TikTok. But the cool thing about it is that never once have I coached him on technique. he's just seen me do it. And when I shared that video with Dennis Rogers and with Adam Glass and Tim Fox and a bunch of other guys, and I sent it to probably 7 or 8 different strongman friends that I know, almost all of them said, wow, he's got really good technique. And I'm like, but I've never actually said, anything. I've never said anything about his technique other than make sure that the hand that's not holding the nail isn't on the board, so that you don't
That's a
hit your
pretty
hand with.
serious one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's that, and you wouldn't have to tell that to an adult, but when he's 3 years old and he's just fully in trust mode and wants to do what daddy's doing, he'll find his body will find the way to get there, but he doesn't understand the inherent danger of self-imposed stigmata by doing that. So really proud of that moment. And it was after I turned it off, this is the coolest thing out of the whole bit, is he told me, I'm really proud of myself.
Good. Excellent.
And I'm of the belief that I can tell him all day long how proud of him I am, and that's great, and I do. But there's a level of meaning that he cannot get any other way than by understanding that he is proud of himself. It's great to get external validation from me and his mom and from the world and all that, but that internal validation of, I did this hard thing and I'm proud of myself for doing it. I think that, like you said earlier, there's a lot of grown people that either don't know how or are inherently afraid to say that about themselves, or they're too wrapped up in their own stories that they tell themselves of why they shouldn't be proud of themselves, to acknowledge that, yes, I did something and it was hard and it was awesome and I'm awesome for doing it.
Yeah.
So that your drawing, reminded me of that. I just looked over and saw, there's that little kid with the stutter popping his head back out. Right. I just looked over and saw what time it is. And I'm like, yeah, we're close to the time that I need to jump off. So I want to, quickly do a rapid fire round with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then is there anything else you wanted to say? I know this is, like we said, this is like a couple of guys talking, but is there anything that you want to say beyond go to Amazon and find this book?
Oh, well, follow me on YouTube. That's where like I actually have a couple things going there where, like, when I do a show, I chronicle it, because like people were asking me for like a sequel to my book, and I'm like, writing a book is a lot of work. I don't want to write another one. That, and it's like, with my book, there's like a definitive beginning point, and there's like when you've arrived, kind of, where there isn't really a point like that. But I still like to remember all my shows, and I'm like, there's still a story to be told, which I started doing it in like a vlog format.
Sure.
Because I'm like, I want it to be something that like I would want to watch that. And like, as far as like reality TV, people are watching people drink and act like bozos. And I'm like, if that's interesting, wait till you see what I bring. Right. Yeah. That, and I like spent 14 minutes of my life watching some guy clean his garage. And I'm like, if that guy can make that interesting, right, surely I can make what I do interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
But then the other thing is, like, I have a mission statement of making the world strong, right? And I started, people would ask me questions and I would respond to them with a video just for them, which, like, people would tell me to get on TikTok, and the format itself of TikTok isn't conducive to go into the kind of depth that I want to go to. So people would ask me questions about my take on various things within strength, in which case we're at a unique time in history where it's like, can you imagine, or where it's like you can interact with the celebrity? Like, can you imagine in the 80s if you sent a question to Arnold Schwarzenegger and he answered it with a video just for you? Right. We're at that point, and it doesn't cost anything. It's beautiful, right? Yeah. So like, that's where I pump out most of my content, is people ask me a question, create a video for them, post it. And then I just, and it also chronicles my performances. So that's really where I would send people. So the YouTube to look for is Eric Moss, The Strongman Experience. Yeah. For anybody wants to check that out. It's going to be the one that has like the most followers, because I've had a couple different accounts over the years. But yeah, I just pulled it up, and there's a video posted from 4 days ago about overcoming isometrics. So
that's
Yeah, that's where I get the most questions is for
yeah,
isometrics.
yeah. All right, so go check that out. Just go on YouTube and search Eric Moss Strongman Experience, and you will find it for sure there. All right, rapid fire time. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received?
Probably when Slim, the Hammerman fireman, told me that I'm capable of it too.
What is your favorite holiday?
Halloween.
What is one useless talent that you have? I know that we've got some seemingly useless talents between the two of us that we've managed to capitalize on, but what's it like a truly useless talent that you have?
Listen to this.
It's the best one yet. Um, if you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably steak.
I'm with you. I'm with you. David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
David Lee Roth.
Share a brief story that your kid said or did, something about your kid that's either funny or heartwarming as a dad moment.
So last year around Halloween, I was walking around the house singing a song called Blood Red Sandman by Lordy. And my daughter Eden, who's 3 at the time, was like, "What's that song, Daddy?" And I'm like, "Blood Red Sandman by Lordy." And she's like, "I want to watch the video." Which, if you've ever seen, it's kind of a scary video, but Eden loved it. She would make up stories about the baby blood red Sandman, and it's like you hear this coming from this little 3-year-old voice. It's hysterical when
Awesome.
you listen to it, you know.
That's awesome. What is a favorite family meal that you have in your house?
Well, a lot of times the kids eat something different than us, but I always love tacos.
You know, almost without exception, people have been saying Taco Tuesday. Like
Yeah,
the past 3 or 4 guys that I've talked to, it's been like Taco Tuesday or Taco Thursday. So that's cool. I'm a
Sierra
fan of
makes it
tacos
on
as well.
Wednesdays, and I'm like, we're so close.
Well, you're bridging the gap, right?
Yeah.
It's like Tuesday, Taco Thursday. So that's good. And then the last one, what is a personal belief or a personal mantra, a personal principle, value, whatever you want to call it, that you want to be absolutely certain that you as a dad instill in your kids?
Do right by others, do right by yourself.
Very good. All right. Well, that is it for me today. I want to thank you, Eric, for being on the show. Any other parting thoughts you want to have for everybody that's listening?
Uh, Not that I can think of, but I mean, if you ever want to do this again, you just let me know.
Sure, I appreciate it, and we will probably do that. I'm going to stop recording now, and we'll talk a little bit. Everybody that's listening, thanks a bunch, and we'll see you next time.